Welcome to the Purpose-Based Retirement with certified financial planner Casey Weade. Casey is the president of Howard Bailey Financial.
Whatever risk you face during your retirement years, we've got a plan.
A published author and radio host.
It's not how much we make during the good times, it's how much we keep during those really bad times.
His advocacy for retirees and pre-retirees has made him a sought-after speaker and trusted financial leader.
And putting a real plan together.
This is the Purpose-Based Retirement.
Welcome to the program. I am Lee Kelso here with Casey Weade, certified financial planner and the president of Howard Bailey Financial. On our program today, we're going to begin with the 3 qualities of money and why each one of them needs to be present in your retirement plan. We're taking questions from callers today, including one from a gentleman who's asking whether 33 mutual funds is a little bit overkill for his situation. We'll see what Casey thinks about that. And then, is this going to be the year of tax reform? And if so, what do you need to be thinking about? That's what's on the program today. Let's get started with what I mentioned there, the 3 qualities of money. Now, what are we talking about here? There's folding money and pocket change, and what else?
Well, there's really only 3 different qualities of that money, that folding money, that stuff that you have in your wallet there. Yeah. It's liquid and it's safe, right? As long as it doesn't fall out of your pocket, it's relatively safe. It's liquid. You can get to it. However, it's not growing, right? It's sitting in your pocket. And those are the 3 qualities of money. There's liquidity, there's safety, and growth. And that's what everyone wants out of their portfolio. You want to have your money safe, preferably FDIC insured. You want to be able to get it back anytime that you want it back. You don't want to have to pay any penalties to get at that, whether it's a principal penalty or an interest penalty, and you'd like it to get all the upside of the market and none of the downside. Unfortunately, there's no such thing as a perfect investment, and this is really the foundation of the purpose-based retirement. And this is more true today than it has been maybe any time throughout history, when we're living in an interest rate environment that's almost at all-time lows. And we have a stock market that's at all-time highs. We end up with some very risky and frustrating places to allocate our retirement dollars. Take, for instance, if we step back just 10 years ago, if we go back to 2007, we would have been able to find ourselves a CD that was paying 5-6% a year. But if we take a step even further back, go back 15 years, you could have had some checking accounts that were maybe yielding 4, 5, 6%. So you had growth, you had liquidity, and you have safety. But the environment we live in today forces us to focus on the efficiency of our retirement strategy more than any other time throughout history. Now we have to focus on what is the specific purpose of those dollars. What do you want them to accomplish? Because we can only get 2 out of 3 of those different qualities in any one investment today. We can have liquidity and safety, we can have safety and growth, or we can have safety and liquidity or growth and liquidity, but we can't have all 3.
So is there one of those various attributes that gets too much focus, and is there something that we're really maybe not giving enough consideration to?
Well, I think it depends on where you're at in your life, but especially for the purposes of the program, focusing on retirees, your retirement, as you step into retirement, maybe you're getting close, maybe you're 5 years out from retirement, or you just stepped into retirement and your whole life has been focused on growth at all costs, and that becomes a mentality. You put money in your 401k, you want it to make 6% or 10%. We're all focused on this return on our investment, but there becomes a time as we step into retirement that it's not about growth at all costs. Once you accumulate enough, it's about protecting that nest egg more than anything else. Now we have to focus more on safety than we do that growth at all costs mentality that you've been trained on over the last 20 or 30 years, maybe 40 years of investing. And that takes us into the second thing that often gets too much attention, which is liquidity. You know, we've been putting our money in our 401ks, your IRAs, and different things like that over the years, and now you say, well, I really don't want to give up any control. But if you give up some control, we can get safety and growth. Or we can maintain growth and get liquidity. I would rather see you focus on protecting that nest egg rather than having that liquidity. Think about your IRAs and 401ks, for instance. Those are vehicles that were created for retirement income. They didn't allow you that tax deduction when you put that money into that 401k or that that IRA so that someday that you could go buy a house, or you could use it for emergencies, or you could take large lump sums throughout your retirement years. It was meant so that you could take small disbursements every year to satisfy your income needs, supplement your pensions, your Social Securities, so that you had enough to retire on. So we don't mind giving up some liquidity on those things if we can still get the safety and the growth aspects that your retirement really needs.
So what happens when people try to get all three of those traits into one investment, into one bucket?
Unfortunately, they get what's called a variable annuity.
Yeah.
Okay.
The bad boy of the investment world.
Yeah, the bad boy of the investment world, because here's a vehicle that appears to have all the answers. Now you've got a place where you can put money, you're going to get protection, you're going to get principal protection, so you don't have any downside. You get upside of the market with none of the downside. You've got guaranteed income, and that type of investment just doesn't exist. You know, a variable annuity is, first and foremost, it's a security. So the funds that you put in there, they're going into the market. They're buying mutual funds with those funds. So you're getting upside and downside of the market, and you're doing so at an average of 3-4% in annual costs. And you may not see that when you pull out your statement, but give the company a call and say, hey, what are my expenses? What are my fees? Don't ask your advisor. Go straight to the company. Don't get a second opinion from the person you got a first opinion from, and you're going to find that those fees are watering down your growth. If we're going to go buy mutual funds, let's go buy mutual funds. Eliminate the mortality and expense charges, the income benefit charges, the extra 2 or 3% fees that you're paying inside that VA. Then if you want a death benefit, go buy life insurance. Right. I had a gentleman the other day that had a $180,000 variable annuity, and he was paying every year $2,500 in death benefit charges to get back his original investment if he passed away. And that's a taxable death benefit. I said, well, what, at your age, 55, 54 years old, we could use $2,500 a year, and how much life insurance do you think we could get?
Huge.
We could get a very large death benefit, maybe as much as $500,000 in tax-free death benefit. That's a more efficient use of the dollars. If we want an income guarantee, there's accounts out there that are created for income guarantees, give you 2 or 3 times the guaranteed income that a variable annuity is going to give you. It's all about financial efficiency in the world we live in today.
So in just the little bit of time that we have left here in this segment, I know you've worked with someone and you've been able to kind of rearrange their portfolio to incorporate all these. Give me an example.
Yeah, I had a couple that I met with that are going to retire early. They're actually going to be retiring at 57 and 59 years old. So they've done a great job. They don't have any kids, so they've been able to save a lot more. And they've had good incomes over that period of time. They've got about $2 million saved for retirement now, and they've managed most of it. A lot of it's in their 401ks, but it's all in individual stocks. It's all in mutual funds. They had growth at all costs. They had growth in liquidity, but they didn't have any safety. They didn't have a real plan for needing that safety either. So what we were able to do is we carved out around $100,000 of that portfolio to be their liquid emergency fund, set that aside at the bank. We carved out $500,000, which is going to guarantee them all the income they need for the rest of their lives. We're going to get about $30,000 in income from that vehicle to take care of them for the rest of their lives, supplementing Social Security and pension. Their income's guaranteed. Now they don't have to worry about stock market crashes. And so then we set aside around $500,000 to set aside as an emergency overflow reserve fund that would take care of extra reserves and create a tax-free death benefit they could use for long-term care. It created about $1.5 million in potential home health care, assisted living, and nursing home care expense coverage that they didn't have to pay a premium for, and then they could continue to take risk in the market and outpace inflation. And they loved the market. They just wanted to make sure they had these bases covered because they've been through some tough times before. Sure. And they have risks now as they step into retirement that they didn't have when they were working. We filled all their gaps. We focused on liquidity, safety, and growth for a very specific purpose for each one of those individual allocations. And now they're going to step into retirement, rest easy, knowing that all their bases are covered.
So there you go. If you'd like to learn more about those tenets, the basics of the purpose-based retirement, I'd invite you to go visit the PurposeBasedRetirement.com. You can download a free chapter of Casey's first book called The Purpose-Based Retirement, and also order a new copy, a copy of his new book, which is called The 2017 Guide to Retirement Efficiency in the Purpose-Based Retirement. So that's all at PurposeBasedRetirement.com. We'll be right back with questions from our viewers in just a moment.
When you have confidence in your retirement future, you can live the life you've always imagined. Because of planning, You now have time to reflect on the wonderful memories of your life. You and your spouse finally have the luxury of leisure time together. To spend fun times with your grandkids, sharing the joy of their excitement about life. Smiling at the thought of quality time with your children and of picking up the check. At last, you have time to breathe and rekindle the love of your life. Why? Because you imagined what could be. You planned for retirement. So today, you own your future.
You need a plan for retirement to create the lifestyle you've always dreamed of. The first step is to tune into the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with your hosts, Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson, every Saturday morning at 11 and Sunday afternoon at 1 on 1190 WOWO and 107.5 FM.
During the week, people reach out to Casey with questions, and we pick out a few of those and ask those viewers to join us here on the program. And that's how we found Alice in Van Wert. Alice, go right ahead.
Hello. I'm 72 and my husband is 77. All of our money is invested in a traditional IRA in my name. About half is in CDs, 1/3 is in the market, and the rest is in municipal bonds. The approximate value of the account is $225,000. I'm very nervous about the market, and I'm very conservative. Do we have our money invested wisely?
Well, thank you, Alice, for your question. And the first thing I would like to point out is the amount of risk that you're taking. I think there's twofold here. One is the risk level that we have. And this may be appropriate for you, but I want you to keep this in mind because I don't know all your specifics, but I think there's this attitude that we have about municipal bonds that says, well, these are safe places to put our money. However, I can tell you story after story about individuals that have seen municipal bond defaults and lost a substantial amount of their life savings as a result of that. These are not guaranteed products. They aren't backed by a legal reserve system. There is risk to this municipal bond portfolio that you have. So if we use the rule of 100, it would say that we need to have about 25% of your portfolio at risk and about 75% of that portfolio should be protected. So we take our age, we say 75. Well, we take our age, put a percentage behind it, and that's how much we should have protected, right? Well, currently you've got closer to 65, maybe 70% of your portfolio really allocated to the market. You've said we've got 1/3 allocated to the market, but in reality you have 2/3 allocated to the market. Only 1/3 of that 2/3 is in the equity markets and the other portion is in the bond markets, but it's still all at risk. So first thing to keep in mind, you may want to think about continuing to do some risk reduction at this time in your lives. And not only are those municipal bonds still at risk, we have now a potential interest problem. Depending on your other incomes that you have coming in, pensions, Social Security, you may have the opportunity to reduce some of the taxes you're paying by starting to tax shelter some of these assets, setting them aside in tax sheltered accounts that can pass on tax-free to the next generation. So it's minimize the amount of 1099s that you're getting at the end of every year from those CDs and the municipal bonds. You may be saying those municipal bonds are tax-free. Well, that might be true that they're federally income tax-free, but not when it comes to your Social Security benefits. Tax-free municipal bond income is still a form of income that's calculated into your provisional income, your combined income that the IRS gives us in order to calculate how much of our Social Security benefits are ultimately taxable. So we may be able to reduce some taxes and also reduce some risk at this time in your life by just focusing in on a little bit more of the purpose and the efficiency of the assets that you've put away. So I hope you find that helpful, Alice. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. Let's roll ahead to Gus over in Winona Lake. Go ahead, Gus.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I'm 82 years old and my wife is 74. Our financial advisor has our portfolio, it's just under $1 million, invested in 33 mutual funds. Do you think that's too many?
Well, Gus, I don't think there's any question that that's entirely too many mutual funds, but this isn't a far cry from what a lot of people experience, right? Because what's happened with you, Gus, you didn't start with one mutual fund, right? You probably started with one, yes, you probably did start with one mutual fund, but you didn't start with 33 different mutual funds. A lot of people bought those mutual funds, and this is where they really come in handy, is when we're looking for a place to diversify our portfolio and we have very little to put away. So we start making these automatic deposits, maybe through your 401k or your IRAs, your retirement accounts, and as you put $500 away a week or $100 away a week, you were able to put that in place. It was professionally managed and fully diversified, and you bought one mutual fund. Then as you accumulated more assets, you said, well, maybe I should buy another mutual fund. You bought another mutual fund and another mutual fund. Eventually, you ended up with 33 different mutual funds, of which there's a lot of overlap going on in there. You've probably owned thousands of different equities. I guarantee you own more equities that are actually traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So when you open up your portfolio, I can also virtually guarantee that you make money when the market goes up and you lose money when the market goes down. And when the market goes up, you don't get as much of the growth because you've got fees and expenses in each one of those mutual funds. And when the market goes down, you've got fees and expenses. You lose more than the market when the market goes down. You're over diversified across all 33 of those different mutual funds. And you also have fees and expenses that you shouldn't be paying today. When you've got $1 million portfolio, that affords you something better. It affords you true transparency. You deserve to get that $1 million somewhere else where you have lower fees and expenses. The average mutual fund costs about 1.5% a year. And then when we tie in those undisclosed expenses, that can easily double the cost. At $1 million, you should easily be able to get your cost closer to 1.3 to maybe 1.5% a year as a maximum charge inside of that portfolio. And I'm sure today you're paying twice that. Instead of $15,000 or $10,000, you're probably paying close to $20,000 or $30,000 a year.
Wow, that's a huge savings possible, Gus. I hope you'll investigate that. Let's get to Taylor down in Gas City. Taylor, go right ahead.
I'm 59. My husband is 54 and semi-retired with an income of around $40,000 per year between us. All of our savings is in our IRAs at close to $1 million. We probably will spend very little of our savings, especially after we take our Social Security benefits. How should we manage our future and current tax liability?
Well, I think one of the things, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I'm going to say this. You've got a huge tax opportunity today because your taxable income's so low. You've got this huge IRA. Stop putting money in your 401k. Stop tax deferring those dollars for the future. You need to start getting some tax-free growth and paying taxes today so you don't have to pay as much in the future. With a $40,000 income, you have an opportunity to take advantage of your full 15% tax bracket, which we know you're going to be at least in the 15% tax bracket in the future. So take advantage of that, convert some of these dollars to Roth IRA. Another thing you may want to think about doing is when you do fully retire, go ahead and delay out your Social Security to age 70. And that allows you even more room to convert your IRAs to tax-free by the time you take your Social Security benefits, so you can afford yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings so we never have to pay Social Security taxes ever again. And so we're focusing on tax management at this point more than anything else, and it's around your Social Security taxes, because if you don't do anything, you'll most likely be in the 25 or 28% tax bracket in the future and pay taxes on your Social Security benefits.
All right, Taylor, thank you very much. We're going to talk more about taxes in just a minute, but if you'd like to learn more about some of the concepts we're discussing today, you can visit the PurposeBasedRetirement.com, and that's where you can order your 2017 guide to maximizing retirement efficiency, and also download a first chapter free of Casey's original book, The Purpose-Based Retirement. Do all that at the PurposeBasedRetirement.com. Now to our question of the day, What was the highest individual tax bracket in 1913, way back when income taxes started? Was it 1, 7, 15, or 39%? We have the answer coming up.
You may have a purpose for your retirement, but have you repurposed your assets to help you achieve your dreams?
At Howard Bailey Financial, we believe in the purpose-based retirement. We help you determine a clear plan of action to get you to your goal. We can help you review all of the variables, find and understand your options, and help you come up with a strategy that gets you closer to your purpose. Let Howard Bailey help you achieve the retirement you deserve.
You need a plan for retirement to create the lifestyle you've always dreamed of. The first step is to tune into the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with your hosts, Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson, every Saturday morning at 11 and Sunday afternoon at 1 on 1190 WOWO and 107.5 FM.
Well, back in 1913, when the income tax started, it was supposed to be temporary. And way back then, what was the tax rate? We gave you several different choices, ranging from 1 all the way up to 39%. Casey, which one of those is correct?
Well, Lee, the answer is surprisingly B. It's 7%. So the answer is B and 7%. Back in 1913, income taxes began with the 16th Amendment. And at that time, the highest marginal tax bracket was 7%. And we had a 1% tax bracket that was due up to $20,000 in annual income. So the lowest marginal tax bracket was 1%. And the 7% tax bracket didn't kick in until you had over $500,000 in annual income. Now, if we put that in today's dollars, we see how drastically these things have changed. That 1% tax bracket would be taxed on all incomes below $463,000 in taxable income in today's dollars. And that highest marginal bracket of 7% would only be levied if your income exceeded $11.5 million in annual income. A far cry from where we find ourselves today, with the highest marginal tax bracket being 39.6% and the lowest being 10%. So after the introduction of taxes in 1913, let's walk through what happened over the years. From 1913 to 1939, we saw a series of 17 different amendments, and those 17 amendments were codified during the first Internal Revenue Code of 1939. Then from 1939 to 1954, the tax code became increasingly more complex, and we had the first generation that said, hey, it's time to simplify the tax code. And so they did that with the Internal Revenue Code of 1954. Now, when they did that, they eliminated a swath of deductions, just like they do today. And between 1954 and 1986, we had 30 years of period of time of which things got increasingly more complex. Back in 1954, we saw a more complex tax code taking us all the way up to a marginal tax bracket of 91%. So we had a lot of different tax brackets and a lot of tax shelters and tax deductions that were available to high income earners. So for many high income earners, they were paying little to no tax at all. And this led during this period of time to something called the alternative minimum tax, or the AMT. Now, as amendments continued to be passed, the tax code got increasingly complex. We got ourselves to the previous and the most recent major overhaul of the tax code, the Tax Reform Act of 1986, leading us to the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. And in 1986, we saw elimination of many deductions, and we also saw the highest marginal tax bracket go to 28%. Now, over the last 30 years, again, we've seen more and more deductions and major tax bracket changes that have made the system more and more complex. And now we find ourselves in a place where we have Republicans controlling both the House, the Senate. We have Trump that was re-elected, so we have a Republican president. And this leads us to not just see this space of 30 years before our last major overhaul, but 30 years prior to that as well. And now we're in a new generation that wants to have a major overhaul of the tax reform. And we've got a lot of similarities between the House GOP's proposal and the Trump proposal for the Internal Revenue Code of 2017. So what we want to do is we want to analyze, so what are those major changes that could be occurring in the near future and impact your tax book as you file your taxes every single year? And the first thing that we want to start with is we want to start with income tax brackets as a whole. And what you're going to find initially is you're going to find that the House GOP proposal is identical now to the President Trump's proposal, in eliminating all the tax brackets that we have today, taking our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different tax brackets all the way down to just 3 brackets, a 12, a 25, and a 33. Then we get to capital gains taxes. There are some major proposed 2017 capital gains changes, and those also apply to qualified dividends. Now, what we see today is we see the 0, 15, and 20% 8% brackets, but we also see a Medicare surtax that takes part of that 15% bracket up to 18.8 and that 20% all the way up to 23.8. Both the House proposal and the Trump proposal would eliminate the Medicare surtax and keep the 0, 15, and 20% tax rates for Trump's proposal. So he's going to keep the 0, 15, and 20 and apply that to those 3 different tax brackets that he is proposing. The House GOP, on the other hand, is proposing that we actually take your capital gains, all your investment income, and take your investment income, cut it in half, and it would be taxed at your highest marginal tax bracket. So as we can see, we would essentially be taking, under the House proposal, a tax rate of 6, 12.5, and 16% on capital gains and dividends. A huge thing that the House may do for investors is they're also including bond income, allowing that to not be taxed at your ordinary income brackets, but actually half of your ordinary bracket. Some proposed deduction changes are out there as well, with those major overhauls being on both sides of the fence. We have itemized deductions for Trump, where he wants to keep the majority of deductions that are out there today. So we wouldn't see a lot of changes to itemized deductions, but we would see a more aggressive P's limitation, which is essentially just a surtax on high-income earners. So that caps itemized deductions at $200,000 for married couples and $100,000 for individuals. Now, if we look at standard and personal deductions, both groups, Trump's proposal and the House proposal, want to consolidate the standard deductions and personal exemptions that we have today into one standard deduction that's larger. So the Trump proposal has the individual deduction at $15,000 and the married deduction at $30,000. The House GOP, for itemized deductions, has eliminated altogether most of the itemized deductions that we have today, keeping some of the major ones such as mortgage deductions, mortgage interest deductions, retirement contributions, some deductions for college savings as well. And they're also consolidating the standard and personal exemptions. And this means the end of AMT, because some of the tax bracket changes and some of these caps on deductions will no longer have use for alternative minimum tax. The above-the-line tax deductions are very different for what Trump is proposing. He's proposing a child care deduction, a dependent parent elder care deduction, allowing you to deduct funds for taking care of adult parents and children that are also living in the house under the age of 13. Also implementing a dependent care savings account, much like an HSA for dependent care individuals, and you may also be able to potentially get a match for those things. The House GOP, on the other hand, aims to completely consolidate or eliminate most of these deductions rather than make things even more complex, and even as simple as allowing you to mail in your tax reform on a postcard. So there are still some substantial similarities and differences between the House GOP and the Trump proposals that'll need to be worked out, and the Democrats are not powerless here. They still have the opportunity to filibuster, but always plan regardless, because you still have some huge opportunities to take advantage of today, regardless of what tomorrow looks like.
Well, it's clear that 2017 is going to be a year of change, so we hope that you will pick up the 2017 Guide to Maximizing Retirement Efficiency at the address on your screen, and that you'll be back to see us next week right here on the Purpose-Based Retirement.